We are joined in this portion of our program. I'm Bob Salter, and joined by Linda Morin, who is joining us to talk about her experience as a breast cancer survivor. She's the author of an interesting publication entitled The Courage to Look Beyond, and that's an interesting title in and of itself, as a matter of fact. Linda, first of all, it's nice to have you join us on our program.
Thanks for having me.
I guess in beginning this discussion, we'll get into talking about your experience with doing the book, and obviously as part of that experience, we have to talk about what you've gone through as a breast cancer survivor. I guess let me start with where we are with you in 2012. How is your health?
Fantastic.
Well, that's certainly good to hear.
Couldn't be any healthier. I feel a lot younger than what I am. I feel so much better now because I've changed my diet completely, and I've looked at life completely different than what I was 5 years ago.
Okay, let's go back 5 years ago. As I understand, you were a single mom at the time. You get this diagnosis of breast cancer.
Yes, I was 45 years old. I was a kickboxer and a runner, and my breast started getting very, very sore. And I went to see my doctor, and I was saying, my breasts are so sore, and they're heavy. I says, I can't kickbox, I can't run like I used to. And he says, Linda, you're 45 years old, you're going through menopause, your hormones are changing, that's what the problem is, but we'll send you for a mammogram. I've always gone for mammograms since the age of 30 years old. My grandmother had died at 68, and my aunt had died of 38. So I went. They've always told me that I had a lot of cysts in my breast, tense breasts, and to come back in a year from now. So I did that for 15 years. But that 1 year, I went back to the doctors, and we had my mammogram done, and they told me that everything was fine. It was the same routine, but there was a little lump that was just a little larger than the others, but not to worry about it. So I didn't. 5 months later, I found my lump, and it was the size of a prune, and it was on my left breast. So I immediately called my doctor, went in and saw him, and I had a lumpectomy 3 days later. 2 weeks later, I went to the doctors to remove my stitches. They told me that I didn't have my results in, but as soon as I went in, she said, Linda, your results just came in. I just had this horrible feeling inside of me, and I went into the doctor's office, and he says, I'm so sorry to tell you this, but you have breast cancer. I just sat there, and the only thing that I thought about was my boys. I was going through a divorce. I was 19 months that I was alone. My mother had just lost her husband. What are we going to do? And that's when I decided, and I told him, I said, what am I going to do? He says, you're going to have a mastectomy. We're going to remove your left breast, and we'll go from there. And I said, well, what are the chances of me having cancer in the right breast? He said, there's a 15 to 20% chance that the cancer will spread. When I got out of the doctor's office, I was devastated. I had to go home, and immediately I wanted to tell my boys and my mother, and telling my family was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, and my mother's reaction was more than any of us could take, and I wish that somehow I was able to take it away and make it not true, but I couldn't. I wanted to find a way to take away her pain, and just seeing the reaction that it caused for my mother and my children, that's when I decided that I was going to fight this horrible disease, and that I was going to do everything in my power to do that. I started searching on the net about cancer, breast cancer, and that scared me even more. So I do recommend to people, do not go on the net to get information, because it will scare you.
Are you saying that because of the, for lack of a better term, misinformation that there is online?
Yes, and it scares you. You know what? Having breast cancer is not as bad as you think. It's in the mind also, and always try and think positive. And for me, at times, it was very difficult to think positive, because the day that I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I went home, and I had a flood. And I called the health department to come in 2 days later because there was so much water in my basement. There was mold. I had to vacate the premises immediately. So here I am going to have a mastectomy in 10 days, and I'm now homeless with my two boys? Where am I going to go? So it wasn't just the issue of having cancer. It was now looking for a new home and moving. And so I asked my doctor, I says, I want 2 more opinions. And I've always say this to women, don't stop with one doctor. Always go out there, get other doctors' opinions. And when 2 doctors tell you the same thing, then go with that one. So I did. I said to my doctor, it's not that I don't trust you, but I need to have more opinions. I did go see 2 other doctors, and one of them had said to me, you were too young. Let's just, remove a portion of your breasts since you're only 45, and let's take that 15 to 20% chance. Well, this is my body. Do I want to take that 15 to 20% chance? Not really. Then I spoke to another doctor, and he told me, Linda, I think it would be best that you would have a double mastectomy. Now, that was a hard decision because my breasts are part of me, and now I'm going to lose both. And then I spoke to another doctor in Los Angeles, and she's a friend of my sister's. And I'd asked her, I said, don't speak to me as a patient, speak to me as a friend. What should I do? And she said, Linda, with your history, remove both. So I did, and that was one of the hardest decisions that I could have ever made. But I know for me, it was the right decision. That's why I removed both breasts.
All right, I got to ask you a question that refers to something early on in this discussion, because I don't think you mentioned this. At the time you were diagnosed and had to give this news to your mother and
my kids,
your children, how old were your kids?
9 and 16. Well,
wow.
He was turning. He was going to be 16 in October, and I found out in August that I had breast cancer. My oldest took it very, very hard. I guess he understood more. Mm-hmm. And for him, when I saw his reaction, he was angry. He was angry, and he looked lost. My youngest, the first thing he said to me is, are you going to die? I didn't know what to answer to that because I didn't know if I was going to die, and I didn't want to tell my son, no, Mommy's not going to die, because if I did, that would have stayed with him and said she lied to me. So I told both boys and my mom, we're going to fight this, and we're going to fight it together, and I'm not going to give up. And my boys were there with me the whole time, and it was so difficult. My son and I both cut our hair. My son had long curly hair, and so did I, and we both cut our hair together just before the surgery because I told him that with the chemo or radiation I'd be losing my hair, so we did it together. But that was the hardest thing that any woman ever has to do, is to tell her children that she's got cancer.
In preparing for that surgery, and I understand the physical process of preparation, but it almost seems to me that preparing yourself mentally for that might be the more difficult task. Was that for you?
It was. It's just that when I was diagnosed, I didn't even have time to think about my cancer until the day before my surgery, because I was so busy looking for another home to live, to move, to organize my children, because I didn't know where my children were going to live. And I knew that after my surgery, I wasn't able to take care of my children. So I sent my son to Los Angeles, and he stayed with my sisters in Los Angeles for that month, and my son stayed with his father. And the day of the surgery, that is when I realized, is when everybody was there. My family and my friends were there, and they were wheeling me to the operating room, and that's when I realized, oh my God, I have cancer. I'm losing my breasts. They're gone. And that's when I realized that this was life or death. It was that day, and that's when I was so scared, and I prayed, and I was hoping that everything was going to be good, but part of me was telling me that it was going to be okay. And it was. I had the surgery, and it was a 7-hour-long surgery. When I came through, the first thing I'd ask is that they remove my lymph nodes. Because if they remove lymph nodes, it means that the cancer had spread. And they said, yes, they've removed 12 lymph nodes, but in all 12 there was no cancer. Since I removed both breasts and there was no cancer in the lymph nodes, I did not need radiation or chemo.
Mm-hmm.
So which was great, because if I would have just removed the one breast, I would have had to go through that. But then I wanted to be alone in my room, and I wanted to feel my chest. I wanted to see what it was like, because I did have large breasts. I was a 36D. And once everybody was gone, I was all bandaged up, and I could barely feel my arms. I was so swollen, I couldn't lift up my arms. And I went slowly, and I put my hand on my chest, and there was absolutely nothing there. And I knew from that moment, when I touched my chest, that I was never going to be the same woman again, that my life changed completely.
So, realizing that, how did you go about the process of moving forward as this new woman?
Once I was back home and they removed the bandages, I got up once the nurse did it, and I wanted to see how I looked. I went in the mirror, and I didn't know that woman in the mirror. She was disgusting. She had a long scar going across from one armpit to the other. She had 3 holes, and I didn't know who she was, and I didn't like who she was. And from that moment on, I said to myself, I will never look at myself again, because I don't know that woman, and I don't like that woman, and I will never allow a man to see me or to touch me. And for 2 years, I never allowed that. I was going through a deep depression, because when I was having my double mastectomy, I had asked for reconstruction immediately, because a lot of women are able to have reconstruction. And the doctor had said that we had to wait for a full year to make sure that the cancer wasn't coming back. Now, just because I did have a double mastectomy doesn't mean that you don't have reoccurrence, because it's impossible for them to remove every single cancer cell from your body. So we had to wait a full year. When that year came, I told him, I said, I want reconstruction. I went to see 3 surgeons, and they all told me that they couldn't really give me breast because I didn't have enough skin. I was too tiny. That they could do the surgery, but I would only be an A cup. It would be 4 surgeries in an amount of 2 years, and I would be more limited because, like I said, I was a kickboxer and I was a runner. After my double mastectomy, I can't do that anymore. They've removed 12 lymph nodes. My upper body's numb, and we have to be very careful not to get lymphedema. So, but I was rollerblading, I was skating, I was still walking, I was doing aqua fitness, I bike every day, and by having my reconstruction, I would have been more limited. So I had to decide, do I want an A cup and not be able to be physically fit, or have no breasts and continue my life the way it is? So I decided not to have reconstruction. But I did go through that depression because I wanted breasts. So somebody had told me about this healing center, a wellness center in West Palm Beach, which is called Hippocrates Health Institute. And that is where I discovered my ability to throw away my fear of not being accepted as a woman, because I had to reveal myself in front of 75 people. And that is where I found myself stronger and empowered now to help other women, because how I felt after showing myself in front of 75 people was amazing, because I always thought that I was disgusting and that I was ugly. But that's not the reaction that I had. People were telling me how courageous I was and that I was their inspiration. I had women approach me and telling me their stories and how they felt about their body. And that is when I decided to write an article in Healing Our World. And the article was all about the acceptance that I received and the power I felt because of it. I became a new woman. I was stronger and in a position to help other women to find their empowerment and to be proud to say that they are a cancer survivor. Being a woman is not about having breasts. It's about overcoming adversity and being stronger for it. It's about being comfortable in your own skin, no matter how difficult it might be sometimes. Appreciate life and live life every single day. I love the person now that I've become, and that is why I wrote a book now which is called The Courage to Look Beyond, to help women just like me to come to terms with their loss and to feel better about the way they look. I'm also working on a clothing line to design for women who had undergone mastectomy, so we don't have to wear our prostheses, because prostheses are heavy and sometimes they're not comfortable. So now I want to design a swimwear, a lingerie, evening wear. So having cancer for me has changed my whole life completely, because I took a negative and I put it into a positive and said, I'm going to fight this all the way. And the way that I felt and ashamed of myself, I don't want women to feel that way. I want them to be proud of being a cancer survivor. And that's why I hope through my book that I will somehow help all of those who have been touched by cancer. But more than this, I want to touch and affect the lives of all women and those who love them. Because now it's our time to find the power. The time has come for us to know who we are and love ourselves regardless of our physical appearance, regardless of our social standings, and regardless of what we have been told to think and to feel about ourselves. Women feel that they have to be thin and then they have to have large breasts to be attractive. No, it's to love yourself, to love what's inside. That is the beauty. It's not what's on the inside, on the outside. It's what's inside is beautiful. In my book, I talk about intimacy. I try and help men, because a lot of men have approached me and said, I don't know how to deal with my wife. She won't allow me to be intimate with her. She won't allow me to touch her. She hides in the closet or in the bathroom when she gets undressed. She won't let me look at her. And I talk a lot about that in the book, how to touch her, how to make her feel better, how to make her feel comfortable, because I went through that. And now I have a relationship with somebody, and I'm happy, and he touches me, and we caress, and we do. Nothing has changed.
How did you come to that, for lack of a better term, acceptance of that kind of, that level of intimacy? Because it would seem, maybe this may be my bias as a man asking this question, but it would seem that there might be a natural reluctance at the start, because again, you're thinking of yourself in a particular fashion, and yes, you may be projecting that onto, this other person, thinking that person is thinking that if they see you, or if they touch you.
Well, I remember the first time when I was intimate, because like I said, it took me 2.5 years to actually be with somebody. And I remember the first time I wore my prosthesis, and we went to bed, and the next time he says, Linda, I don't want you to wear that. You don't need to wear your prosthesis. So I took them off. But then he wanted to look at me. And that was the hardest thing. Even though I wrote my article and I revealed myself to the world, and here I am topless to the world, I still couldn't show myself to my partner. And when he finally did look, there was a candle burning, and so he could see a little. I cried, and I cried because somebody has seen me. He's looking at me for the first time. But then when he started kissing me and caressing me, I felt more and more comfortable. It's because the way that he was with me and the way that he accepted me, he didn't treat me any differently. He did not treat me like if I didn't have breasts. He still touched my chest like if I had breasts.
When you talk about that experience with intimacy and developing that level of comfort, when you talk about that experience with fellow survivors of breast cancer, what's the reaction you get?
They look at me like I'm crazy. So what I did is I returned to Hippocrates. I wrote another article, and the article is called, you could go on my website, thecouragelookbeyond.ca, and you could read the article, and you could see the picture, and it's called The Beauty Within. When I was writing my book, because I had so many calls from people all over the world when I wrote my first article about revealing myself, I had people, men, women from all over the world calling me, texting me, emailing me, and telling me their experience. As I'm writing the book, I had to relive all of my experiences, those 3 years with cancer. And it wasn't just the cancer and being homeless. My son was also diagnosed with epilepsy, and that is all in my book. And I'm saying it doesn't matter what life brings you, always try and be strong and never to give up. And I didn't know how I was going to end my book, and so I decided to go back to Hippocrates. And I went back, and I says, I want to finish my book. I'm not quite sure. And during that time, I had so many women approaching me and telling me about their body and what they didn't like about it and how they felt comfortable about it. So I decided I wanted to do a healing circle. And I says, in this circle, we're all going to go topless. When I announced that, not one woman said she wanted to do it because she couldn't reveal herself. I wanted them to feel that power of freedom, the way that I felt. I'm free again. I'm born again. None of them. And I said to them, I said, well, I'll be on the roof at 2 o'clock on Thursday if you change your mind. 21 women showed up. And I was so surprised because when I got there, there was 2 women there, and then all at once they start coming. 21 women came, and we were all there, and we held hands, and I wanted each and every one of them to tell me why they were uncomfortable. What was it about their body? And these are not women that had cancer. Some had cancer, some didn't, but they just had scars, and they weren't happy with their bodies. We held hands. They all said a little something about themselves, and then I said, are you ready? And they've all removed their tops, and then they had to say something and how they felt. And then I said, can I have a photo shoot? Because this is going to be in my book, and I want to write an article about this experience. They were running on the ground. Everybody was topless. They were all running. They were all laughing. And I've got some of their stories, what they wrote about their experience in my book and in my article and how they felt and how much it changed their life just by revealing themselves and by accepting the woman that they are, accepting their image. It's not the beauty on the outside. It's the beauty on the inside. And that's the end of my book, is that journey at Hippocrates and all these beautiful women accepting themselves, and they're all there topless. So when you look at them at the article and in my book, there's a full page of them, all these beautiful 21 women topless.
Linda Morin talking with us on our program and talking with us about her experience in putting together the book, The Courage to Look Beyond. She is a breast cancer survivor and very kind with her time in joining us on our program. One of the things that always comes up in discussions about breast cancer is this whole issue with mastectomies.
Yes.
And there is a study that says that fear of breast cancer may lead to unnecessary mastectomies. What's your reaction to the idea of this study?
Well, mammograms can be inaccurate, just like mine, because mine didn't show up. There is a controversy when you see women with tense breasts or with lots of cysts. They could be misdiagnosed. You may not be able to see it on the mammogram, but there's this new machine that just came out, and it's called tomosynthesis. It's a 3D machine. It increases the cancer detection of 60%. The difference it goes side to side. Instead of the mammogram just staying there, the machine, now it goes side to side so they could see more. So they can't see the breast closer, and you're able to detect if it's a cyst or a tumor. So it is getting better. I don't like mammograms because they didn't see mine. And yes, some women, they're misdiagnosed. Unfortunately, I always tell women, if you have tense breasts, you have lots of cysts, you go for your mammogram, you go for your ultrasound. Always keep your reports with you. After your ultrasound, and if you see that there are lots of lumps, ask for an MRI, because the MRI will see it even better. Go every year and always keep your reports with you. I wish I would have known that, because I was going for 15 years for mammograms. If I would have known that I could have had my reports with me, they're mine, I would have compared it every single year, and I would have seen my tumor growing. But I didn't know any better. So now I always tell women, please keep your mammograms with you, keep your ultrasounds with you, keep your MRIs with you, and compare, because you have to be your own doctor. Doctors are busy. They have so many patients. We're like a number to them. You have to be your own doctor. You have to educate yourself on these things. Just like now women, they're going for genetic testing. Mm-hmm. With genetic testing, and the reason why women go for a double mastectomy, even though they don't have breast cancer, but if it's running in the family and they have a family history with tense breasts and cysts, and they have it, the chances of them having breast cancer, if they do have the gene, is 80%. I didn't know that, but I was always saying, why are these women removing their breasts if they don't have cancer? But if they are carrying the gene, there is an 80% chance of them having cancer. Mm-hmm. But also, it has a lot to do with diet. And I talk about diet in my book. I talk about juicing. I talk about wheatgrass. Wheatgrass is the grass of a young wheat plant. It also is a powerful health food supplement that is packed with highly concentrated vitamins, minerals, and enzymes. Wheatgrass is a complete food that contains 98 of 102 earth elements, and I take that every single day. After breast cancer, a year later, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And I had to have a full hysterectomy. Again, here I am thinking I'm going to die a year later. A woman had told me, she goes, Linda, I want you to take wheatgrass. I want you to take 6 ounces a day, 2 ounces at a time until the day of your surgery. 3 days before my surgery, they had to retest me. I had no more blood in my urine. My white blood cell counts were normal. My pap test was normal. My swelling in my stomach was gone. And my surgeon said, what did you do? I said, I started taking wheatgrass. She goes, well, whatever that is, continue. I said, does that mean I don't need my surgery? She goes, yes, you do need your surgery. I did, and there was absolutely no cancer. I had a lot of cysts on my ovaries, but not one was cancerous. And I say that is all about the wheatgrass.
The other thing I want to ask you before I let you go is the message you would give to men who are listening to our discussion today from 2 standpoints. One, about this area that is very little talked about, the idea of men with breast cancer.
Yes, men can get breast cancer. Mind you, breast cancer in men is far lower than it is in women. Perhaps I think it's 1 in 200, if that. A male with a breast lump should consider very similar to a woman with a lump, except the lump can be easily biopsied, typically with a fine needle. They put the needle into the lump and suck in a small amount of tissue. Men have to do their breast examination just like a woman does. Every single month, you're in the shower. If you don't want to do it, have your partner do it. Your partner will probably notice it more than you, but you have to do your breast examination every single month. I have had 2 men so far. My book has been out 2 months, and I've had lots of book signings, and during the 2 months, I've had 2 men already approach me with their breast cancer, and they're too shy to even admit to people that they have breast cancer. They're embarrassed. But it has to come out now because more and more people are having breast cancer. So men, it's the same thing with a woman, except you cannot have a mammogram, but it will be a biopsy. But I also say, though, a lot of it is our food. Our food, we have to, you have to start eating more fruits and vegetables. The more I juice, and I have a lot of recipes also in my book. I juice my wheatgrass every morning. I also have a sprout juice. I have a green juice in the morning, which is celery, kale, and ginger and cucumber, and I drink that in the morning. That's my breakfast. In the afternoon, I make myself a vegetable juice, which is broccoli, cauliflower, spinach, carrots, beets. I put all of that in there. Those are all antioxidants, and they fight the cancer. It gives you so much energy, and you feel so much better. Everything that you need in your body is in your juice. Mm-hmm. So I have those. I also have a lot of vegan dishes in there, but you have to start exercising, start changing your diet, because all of these things do help, and it does prevent cancer.
And then the other aspect I wanted to say for men, but, that's showing a bias on my part, that it's just going to be a man and a woman in a relationship, if that's the case. But let me say the partner of the person who has been diagnosed with breast cancer and other family members, what would you say to them is perhaps the most important thing that they can do to be supportive of that person?
To be there and not to say, I understand what you're going through. That's the last thing we want to hear, because you do not understand what we're going through. Nobody will ever understand how it feels to be diagnosed with cancer unless they've been diagnosed with cancer. Just be there. Just be there for that person and be patient, because a lot of times what we're going through, we're not very nice sometimes. We'll get grumpy. We might yell. We have so much anger inside of us. Just let us be, and just be there and support us. That's all we need, is just to be there and knowing that you're there for us.
Linda, thank you very much for being so kind with your time. The book, again, is entitled The Courage to Look Beyond. Linda has joined us on our program. Certainly continued good health to you.
Great. Thank you very much.